Hello again, Bob Chaundy here with another Considering Art podcast in which I talk to an artist about their work and something of their life. My guest today is the South African artist Farook Mohammed. Farook is based in the Mandela Bay metro area in the Eastern Cape in the very south of the country. Until recently, he was artist in residence at the Athenaeum there, a grand Victorian building that houses a number of gallery spaces and a theatre. Farook recently won a South African National Award for Best Visual Artist. His work shows a passion for Pan-Africanism, inspired by his diverse ancestral roots that span continents. In today's uncertain and unstable times, his paintings are a rallying cry for unity. A recent solo exhibition of his posed the question, can art change the world? As a Pan-African artist, I'm committed to using my art to promote a positive image of Africa and to celebrate the diversity of our culture, he says. I believe that art has the power to bring people together and to break down barriers, and I'm dedicated to using my talent to make a positive impact on the world. I spoke to Farook from his home in the Eastern Cape. Farook, welcome to the Considering Art podcast. Delighted to speak to you and to meet you for the first time.
Thank you for having me, and I actually feel grateful for being part of this.
Farook, you have an interesting family background. Please tell us about it.
Yes, well, my family background is something that dots all over the world, basically. It dots the whole continent of Africa, all the way up into the Middle East, including Europe as well. So it's a very diverse family that I've got. So when we have family meetings or gatherings, it's a mixture of nations that come together. So sometimes when people are like from outside the family and they're looking in and they're like, okay, but how does this all tie into each other? And it's like, well, aunties, uncles, cousins, you name it, and we're all very close. But that's just the setting. That's how it is. So it's African, it's Arab and European. And that goes also to Canada as well. We've got family that side.
Gosh, that's a lot of different religions and cultures by the sound of it.
Yeah, I'll rather say it's like a fruit salad.
Are there tensions as a result of that cultural, political, personal mix above and beyond the normal family disagreements? Or has that mix provided you with a role model for the human race, say?
Yeah, it's actually something that inspires my work as well as an artist, because if we look at the setting of the world currently, there's a lot of nations not seeing eye to eye. They don't have this way of looking at each other as human beings, and they've lost their humanity. If they talk about a different race or different person with a different skin color, and that's all that they see. They don't see that the person is a mother, a father, a son, a daughter. It's like psychologically they erase that reality of the person being a human being. And that's where racism, intolerance, and all of those things come from. So for me, with this diverse family background, I can't choose sides when it comes to people having conflict. For me, it's like a family fight. So having to resolve things in the world is, for me, it's primarily using my art and making people realize and see the normal human being person in the next person, in the other one. And when we see that in the next person, it becomes even more difficult for us to even raise our hands at them or raise a gun at them, point a knife at them or anything, because we start thinking and we start seeing the person as a human being. We start seeing ourselves within them. And it's easy for people to harm each other when you erase the humanity of another. So it's about getting that out of the way. So for me, it influences my artworks. So it does become a political thing for me, but I don't like pointing fingers at the past. The past is the past. We're right here. This is the present. We're at this moment. My focus is more on future. So I create artworks that's meant for the future. yes, I will take inspiration from the past, but I take inspiration from only the good side of things. Because if we are going to pull that baggage with us, we're never going to end up achieving this state of peace, global peace, like, throughout the world. What can we do collectively for the benefit of all human beings? And if we can get rid of conflict, if we can get rid of racism, if we can put all of these things out of the way, then come up with all these fancy ideas that we have about the future.
Let me just refer to one of your paintings as we're talking about a little bit about the past, and that's called Echoes of a Forgotten History, where you have a mosque in the background against an azure sky. There's Muslim folk in the foreground, and there's all sorts of symbols such as the wagon, which is a very South African symbol, and there's a traditional African mud dwelling. What is the forgotten history that you referred to in the title?
If I was to look at that painting, right, I'm actually looking at it right now. And in South Africa, a lot of people came from Europe and they settled over here, settlers. We need to look at history for what it is. A large part of history has actually been swept under the rug, and people hide things over time. So for me, it's like, okay, this is something that deserves to be known. We cannot push it under sweep it away. People fled Europe back in the day due to religious persecution and a whole bunch of other things. And they ended up settling in South Africa. Not all of them came here as settlers because of religious persecution. Others saw an opportunity to make money. It's a new piece of land. Let's go. There's gold. There's food. There's everything. But there was also people that they had to deal with over here. But what happened is a large percentage of the people that came from Europe during that time was a diverse group of people. It was Germans, people from Germany, from Netherlands, from Spain, you name it. It was different countries, and people were ending up on what was called the Cape of Good Hope. But a little bit of that history wasn't known to a lot of people. It's that the people that came from Europe, a lot of them were Muslims as well. And these are European Muslims because Islam is not new to Europe. And I've noticed that at many times a lot of people want to hide that part of history as if the Islamic religion wasn't part of Europe, as if it's something new, modern. It's not. It's been there for like more than 1,000 years already. And when people came here, they came here as Europeans. Most people consider you like a white person, including my own family members, my dad, and etc. A lot of people class me as a white European person. But within South Africa, I'm not seen in that light. I'm seen as just an African because I'm here. We're all African. And the people that settled here also identified themselves back in the day as African. And that's where the word Afrikaner comes from. And they've adopted that. But the interesting part about the Afrikaner community is that even the Afrikaans language that was being developed and came into existence, which is a fairly new language, but it's very developed. Afrikaans itself was first written in Arabic script.
Really?
And that tells you another thing about history. If it was written in Arabic script, it means that the people that settled here from Europe could speak Arabic. Because if we look at the world for what it is historically, at some point, Arabic was more popular than, let's say, English. English became a global language more recently, if we make a comparison between the two. So a lot of people in Europe could speak Arabic. It's just that the language then faded away again over time. Although even English itself is heavily influenced by some of the Arabic words, etc. And those documents from back in the day still exist in the Afrikaans language. That's written in Arabic script. We still have those here at museums and places. There's translations of those books as well. But it was mainly used for religious purposes. This painting is trying to capture that history. the cultural setting of the time, because people didn't lose their culture coming from Europe. They still held onto their cultural beliefs and stuff like that. However, it wasn't just everyone that came from Europe to South Africa that was Muslim. It was mixed. It was Christians, it was Jews, it was Muslims, but a large percentage was also Muslims. And it's almost as if certain parts of history was people have tried to erase it. So for me, it's more like I need to preserve this. I need to preserve that calm lifestyle, the Dutch vibe. Keep it there. It's something that people need to be proud of, not something that you should look at like, oh, I don't want to know about this, or I don't want to say part of history. It's actually a beautiful part of history, because our history has been tainted with, let's say, the apartheid era, an example, where people being oppressed, where it was the white minority oppressing the black majority of people in South Africa. But even that event and that time frame of when things happened, if I look at the timeline, what happened to people, I must also look at things psychologically. What happens to people when they've been utilized by another powerful force? And what happened in South Africa, the British also came here, and they had a time where they took over the country. But during that time, when the British took over, they brutalized the Afrikaner community, which is the white minority of South Africa. And these people were put in concentration camps. They were treated very, very badly. And then obviously the Anglo War broke out, and the Afrikaner community stood up along with all other communities in South Africa, the black community. So they came together to kick off the British. But what happened after that is, because of the experience they've had with the British, they became more defensive and afraid of everyone else. So they betrayed the people that supported them to kick off the British. And only after that time, apartheid started coming into effect. Anything prior to that, you'll find that people were mixing, and there was a lot of intermarrying between different nationalities and races. That's why even the Afrikaner community, I don't see people as being purely European themselves. They are mixed with other Africans as well. And not just people that's from Africa, but people from Yemen, as far as Yemen, and India, Malaysia, because those are also nations that ended up in South Africa at the same time. Because people were brought here, they started working on the side, and that's that history that I'm trying to capture. Is this mixture, is this diversity, and a part of history that a lot of people don't want to remember. But it's a beautiful part. Why should we erase that? So for me, it's something that we can be proud of.
I'd like to refer you to another one of your paintings, actually, called After World War III, where you have figures from different races, different eras, and you see
different nationalities, different parts.
And some have been slain. In the background, you have a burning cathedral, reference to Christianity, and also a towering mosque, which is sort of the other way, is sort of exuding light. And I just wondered why you put the positive on the Islam and the negative on the Christianity.
If I delve into that one, it is all to do with politics. It has everything to do with politics. It's not something where I'm taking a hit at Christianity or I'm fighting with the religion or putting up a conflict. As you can see, there is a multitude of different nations on that battlefield. So it's got a cathedral and a mosque in the background. And in the front of that, it depicts a battlefield scene, but it's an ancient battlefield scene. But we're in the modern time, and I'm talking about after World War III. So there's some contradictions that's going there. After World War III, but it's got like an ancient scene that's going down there. So it's people from India, from Africa, from all the different nations that were previously colonized. That's what's on the battlefield. And if you look at the other side, it would show people that's been slain. It would show figures from the Crusades or the Spanish Inquisition. It's almost like a reversal of history, the opposite in direction. Where that painting got inspiration from was how predictable our world is. If we look at the current setting of how things are, I made that painting a couple of years ago, and it looks very much like how things are set in today's time.
Unfortunately, true, yeah.
Yeah, like we close to World War III. We've got China, Russia, African nations. Everyone else is like, we're tired of things happening from the Western world. We resetting things. And that's practically what's happening. There's going to be a new currency coming out. There's going to be a new shift in global trade, etc., etc. My thing is, I'm a diverse person. I've got a diverse family background, and I want peace all over the world. So I made this painting with the thought in mind, I need to be able to put out something that's actually predictable, yet something that I don't want to see happen, because the sign for the downfall of Western civilization came with Afghanistan and what happened there in Iraq. Afghanistan is known as the graveyard of empires. It's a place where if you go and fight in a place, you're not going to come being an empire anymore. And that's something that's been known for many years. After NATO of Afghanistan, it was almost like a sign that this is the end. Immediately after that, Russia said, okay, well, it is what it is. They felt, I've got more muscle now, these guys are done, because they've wasted everything. They've really dug themselves, oh, NATO is finished. And everyone else saw that, it's the demise of the West. But I don't see it as the demise of the West. I see things more as an opportunity for nations to come together. I see this era as an opportunity for the youth. Normally you find people that are stuck in a Cold War era, or they're stuck in a World War II, World War I scenario. And if you're stuck in the past, you will always drag it along with you. The newer generation doesn't have issues. I don't believe that a single person that in today's life, right now, on this very day and going forward, any of the youngsters, be it in the United States, in Europe, in China, in Russia, in Africa, have issues with each other. None of us have issues. We are the ones that have issues. It's people currently sitting in positions of, and they need to be more mature. For me, peace is achievable through peace and not war. But a lot of people, they don't want to speak that language because, let's be honest, people are profiteering off conflict. And as an artist, I believe that I represent the world's voice. I need to be a voice of reason to bring people together to say, listen, if this is how you see things will be destroyed in that way. So if I look at that painting called After World War III, it's not something that I want to happen. It's not something that I actually envision or see happening, but it's just me capturing what was predictable quite a few years ago.
I mean, you say that we're all the same, and we're mothers, we're fathers, we're sons, we're children, all that sort of thing. Unfortunately, we all come, as you mentioned before, with our different baggage, and people have tried Pan-African experiments before, but it's tended to founder on the rock of religion, culture, all the or almost ingrained respect. Is it naive, really, to think that we can unite even the next generation?
I don't think it's naive. For me personally, I'm going to be honest, I will grab from history what is good. There has been hundreds and hundreds of years of great leaders from history that have managed to unite people of different groups, brought them together, and set up a new civilization. Whether it's just maybe a certain part of the world or a certain country, or they founded something new, a great movement. And I believe because we are globally connected, you can rise up in that setting and bring people together. If I look at religion as an example that inspires people all over the world, and saying religion in general, many of us look for a certain figure that would be a savior or a unifying force. And I believe that we shouldn't even just be looking for a religious figure. We are all that force. It's about realizing one specific thing, because I've identified the exact problem. And addressing that problem, it starts with realizing that the next person is a human being, and we need to start looking at each other as an uncle, a mother, a father, a son, a daughter. When we see ourselves in the next person, conflict ends. That's the recipe for me.
You recently held an exhibition, the title of which is How It's Done, Art That Changes the World. Do you think that art can change the world?
I certainly do believe so. Even the former late President Nelson Mandela, in one of his statements that he said is that artists can reach places further than any politician. And I believe that to be true. And we've seen people rising up, let's say in Far East Asia side, around there, even in South America, I've seen artists rising up and, voicing things, and they've inspired society to move away from certain political trends, or they move away from a certain individual or group. And they said, we've had enough of this political setup, we're now shifting and we're moving this way. So I believe artists do have a responsibility and a duty to do that. I mean, we also have a responsibility to try and preserve history, capture the beauty around us, and all of those type of things. But beyond that, we need to not just say, okay, I'm going to capture all of the stuff that I see that's happening in my time. That's just one thing. But what can I do to change things for the better? It's not about using art to put one above the other. For me, it's about the collective. It's about the whole of humanity. And in some way, I'm using art more as a prophetic means, as a messenger, like, putting out the message out to people that you can receive visually. Art is meant to evoke emotion. And some of the stuff that I've has been created with that in mind, that it will spur up certain emotions in people. Will spur up certain feelings. You mentioned the one artwork that's called After World War III. Some of the scenes would trigger certain feelings. It would bring about someone to think, hey, there's a burning cathedral. Why is the mosque standing? Some people might take it the wrong way at first, but the information is there to say that this is not what it really is. It's actually something different. Sometimes we have to use triggers to get people's attention to a certain message, even if it's a trigger that might make you feel uncomfortable for seconds. But after that, you're going to smile and it's like, it's one of those things. And then you would be in support of that message and you would carry further on with it. And that's how I focus with my artworks. Everything has purpose. Everything has meaning. It's always got a story behind it.
I think that you're right in the sense that art can go further than politics, but in the end, it's politics that actually creates unity or can create peace. I mean, we saw those wonderful, if painful, truth and reconciliation hearings, which did healing process in South Africa. Politicians in my country, suddenly we got the anniversary of the Good Friday Agreement, which put an end to in Northern Ireland, at least for now. I just wonder whether that truth and reconciliation influenced you as well as a South African.
To be honest, for South Africans collectively, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, a lot of people feel that it did not do 100% justice to the needs of all South Africans. There was a lot of healing that was needed. There was a lot of wounds. People were injured both sides. It's difficult transitioning from a government that was run primarily just on race-based, like extreme racism. People needed to recover from these things. But I don't think that it did 100% justice. People wanted more. More in the sense of equality. More in the sense of truly coming together. And it didn't happen immediately. It's something that's been taking a while. It's been gradually happening. And people wanted it much faster. And if I look at the current setting in South Africa today, racism is banned, in South Africa. That type of thing, it's like a thing of the past. But there's still a sense of inequality. And some people are looking at reverse racism in certain circumstances and so. My solution for all kinds of issues boils down to one thing that I've realized, and it's the solution where people start seeing a father, a mother, a brother, a son, a daughter in the next person. That's the only way we can reconcile in any type of conflict. For me, I believe artists globally have a responsibility to set the record straight. To say, okay, I'm not going to fall for these games because, like in World War I and World War II, artists were used for propaganda purposes too. They had to come up with things and it was turned into leaflets that was dropped off planes in Germany or vice versa to either break the morale of the population, whichever side. And I don't think artists need to be used in such a way because a lot of people are being used and abused for political aims and goals that doesn't align with being a human being. A normal human being, it doesn't align with humanity. It doesn't align with peace at all. So if we need to move the world forward, and it's not just people that's visual artists like myself, doing paintings and drawings, artists in general, whether you're a musician, whether you are an actor in film, everyone needs to take responsibility and say, let's get rid of the propaganda, let's get rid of the hate, let's tell a beautiful story about and not just about our country, but about our world. We're talking about going into space and exploring and going there and traveling to different places. How can we as people anywhere in the world talk about anything beyond Earth if we are not seeing each other eye to eye? If we're not working together, we won't even reach those places because we are dependent on each other. In terms of technology, it would have been way further globally if nations started working together.
I find it quite interesting that as part of this strive for unity, you've homed in quite a lot in your paintings on women. Let me give you an example. There's one that you title I Am Perfect Just the Way I Am, where you have a woman in a traditional headgear walking very vibrant colours, and there are two lions beside her. I presume they symbolize strength of women. Is that what you had in mind there?
Yes, strength and power. It's because today's time we find people wanting everyone to conform to whatever their norms are in different parts of the world. And what this image is saying is, this is an African woman. She's comfortable in her own skin. She's uncomfortable in her own culture. She doesn't need to conform to other people's style or fashion or dress or way of being. She doesn't need to bleach her skin to look lighter or anything. It's to capture something about a person as you are and saying, we don't need to conform to anything in any part of the world. Just be who you are, as you are. It doesn't matter where people are from. You are enough as you are. People need to be able to see past everything. Cultural differences, religious differences, skin tone, hair color, whatever. It doesn't matter. Texture. All we need to see is another human being.
There's another picture that you've drawn. I know that you're particularly proud of this one. It's called Makoti, which has a woman. She has a sort of cubist face, I would say, and her headdress is which is a traditional headdress, is sort of oddly balanced on her head, and it's balanced and it's by a similar tribal dress on by her shoulder, but the face is sort of enveloped into the dark sky behind her. I just wonder what you had in mind when you painted that.
This is something I planned years. I didn't put a single dot of paint on a canvas or anything until I had the idea properly placed down. And obviously, I'm from Africa, so I'm going to grab a little bit of African culture. And part of it with Pan-Africanism, I needed to grab inspiration from the north and the south of Africa. So the clothing is Southern Africa, but the layout of it is also North Africa. So it has this combination of what you would find maybe in Egypt, Queen Nefertiti, very famous. And then the cultural way of dress in the south. However, the women also dress more or less like that. They also have headgear like that in South Africa. So it was about capturing something that would have a lot of beauty in it. And what inspired this was actually the world of art collectors. People, the hustle and bustle. What's the best thing out there? What's the new thing? And I was looking at art in general, especially old master works. And I said, okay, what's the best or greatest artwork according to the internet today? And everyone was like, Mona Lisa, Mona Lisa, Mona Lisa. And I said, okay, well, I don't want my painting to live under the shadow of Mona Lisa. So I thought about the traits that it has. What is it that makes it unique, etc. And I thought, okay, let me put that into my painting and give it a feel and a sense of doing the exact same thing. There is a bit of an optic illusion going on with the Mona Lisa. We all know that. People talk about the mysterious smile. She's always looking at you. Same thing with Makoti. It does have some changes in it. Depending on the distance you stand from the painting.
What does Makoti mean?
Like wife. Yeah. But it's a wife, so a Zangoma. What people know in the western side of the world would say is a witch doctor. Over here, we just say it's a healer, it's a doctor. A psychologist and a herbalist. That's what Zangoma is. So this woman, she's someone's wife, and she's a Zangoma. She's a healer and also a psychologist. And that's the meaning behind her. But it also this painting has the same effects. Wherever you are in the room, it will always face you. It will always be like the woman is facing you, she's looking at you. If you at a certain distance, her face changes, and it's no longer this very beautiful woman that you see. To add something, because some people have the stigma is warm. They put fear behind this beauty. So it's not just full face, but then I put something in there that makes painting a bit scary at the same time. So if a certain distance, the face is almost like the skeleton half of it. Especially with thing as well, where you don't need it close to it. If it's a bit darker in a room, it's more skeletal coming from the paint itself.
Why did you make it scary?
I wanted to grab a little bit of controversy that's where people think of Zangom being scary. Like, I'll give you some fear. If the paint hangs out and the lights off and you may have the television, obviously there's a fluctuation between the light up and down. It will look like the paint's moving around. It does give you a bit of a something that I worked on, crafted nicely. I sketched it, planned around it, okay, and I set myself up and said, okay, I need to have something that can stand the time. But it's more about women understanding different roles sometimes play in society. Stigmas that's attached to things are occupied. But if you look at painting, it shows a lot of stress, a lot of power. It shows a woman that, influential. But I had to have a little different styles of artistic style. And I thought to myself, let me put a little bit of everything. And that dried up with the way it is today.
Your aim, unity, strive for unity are laudable, Farook. Thanks so much for thinking about that and your art. It's a real pleasure.
It's a pleasure too. I really hope that the works that I've produced does carry the message to the world that it does fulfill what it's been created can inspire the next generation as well.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Farook Mohammed and his look call for peace and harmony. Thanks for listening. Bob Chaundy saying, see you next week.